Welcome to the Spawn Chunks, episode number 115 for Monday, November 16th, 2020. My name is Johnny, but the internet knows me as Pixel Riffs, and joining me as always is Joel Duggan. Hi Joel, it's November 16th, I'm sorry.
Time is nothing, as we were discussing in the render distance, trying to figure out where did fall go, did we have summer? And also discussing some custom texture packs and what some of the new blocks in the snapshots mean for custom model makers and custom even resource pack makers and stuff like that. So it should be a lot of fun. If you're interested in that extended conversation, including an email I'm going to tease you about now about Minecraft and Dungeons and Dragons, then check out the render distance. You can become a member at patreon.com/thespawnchunks to access an extra 30 to 35 minutes of episode every week.
And surprisingly, we actually talked about Minecraft in this week's pre-show, which is actually kind of rare. We tend to go into more just like what's going on in our life and what else we're into lately. But the Minecraft discussions do creep in here and there. They're more common, I think, in the post shows than anything else. But it's nice to throw in a bit of variety. Let's talk some more about Minecraft, though, Joel. What have you been up to on the server this week?
So I have been working hard on my orange farm or orange farmhouse, and it is a big potato build. It has like stone walls, and now it has a roof texture, and I've been using Zero's Minimap as a very light Vanilla Plus map mod to kind of help me navigate and design the space. And it's been going well. I've had some challenges, but over this past weekend, I feel everything really started to come together. You know, like all the crops are full grown, the walls are all done. I added an angled barn, the very first time I've ever built something on an angle in Minecraft. And I'm talking like a 30-degree angle, nothing easy like a 45. Like I went hardcore on this. And it doesn't have straight ends either. I was looking up because I got frustrated at the end of one stream and thought, okay, I'm getting there. I want to puzzle through this on my own, but I'm tired. It's the end of the stream. I'm probably going to have to go look this up. So I looked up a couple of angled builds, and what people tend to do is while two of the walls are on an angle, the other two are straight.
Yeah. And
mine are not.
Mm-hmm.
I really had a proper angle on this thing. So it did take me a little while to figure it out, but essentially the solution I ended on was to have the end caps of the building be taller than the roof.
Yeah.
And it actually worked out well. One, it looks older, so it looks like an older building on the property, which is good. But it also made the roof a lot easier to manage. You can do an overhanging gable on an angled build, but it looks really chunky unless you're building it massive.
Yeah.
And this barn is only 7 blocks wide, so it did. My only regret on the barn build is that it is just not really big enough, or it's not big enough to do on an angle. If I was to do it again, I probably would have built it square just to kind of have it look a little bit nicer. But challenge was accepted, and I think I did okay. But I'm really happy with the way that things are coming together with the space now that I've got like little livable details. There's a wood pile outside the kitchen. There is a work area on the side where there's the big chimney. So there's like a bench with like a cutting, a stone cutter and a grindstone and an anvil. And I've got a lot of the pathing and stuff is done, some textures and stuff happening. It's been difficult not to do the paths and have them look like polka dots, but I'm really happy with the way things are coming together. And I cannot say how much fun and how useful it has been to use Zero's Minimap and World Map fabric mod for this.
Yeah.
I disabled everything about it that shows you where treasures and mobs and like everything is, and the only thing it does is just give you an up-to-date, color accurate and height accurate map of the world. And so to draw lines of walls and figure out, does this angled build look right without having to constantly fly around with rockets? I feel like it's one, saving me a lot of time, and and as an artist, as a 2D artist, it helps me considerably. I also feel like it's better content in terms of like, you're just not constantly zipping around with your rockets on stream trying to get a look at something while people are doing the same thing. I can just stop what I'm doing, pop up the map, and show people what's happening. And it's been super, super valuable. I really appreciate it.
Are you not now tempted to build like kind of crop circles and write patterns and words in the farmland? Because I'm looking at a picture of this from a minimap perspective, and it obviously looks sort of similar to a Minecraft map in all, but I think some of the color palette being slightly different. But it would immediately be something where I would want to do like an alien landing site kind of crop circle or something like that, something from out of Signs or whatever.
I've got plans for more complicated cities, and I think it's going to be fun to do like a circular city that maybe has like a wagon wheel sort of look to it, or something that feels like these ancient people, whatever they happen to be, especially if you get into more fantastical stuff like elves or things in fantasy where they are perceived to have either a higher culture or a very different culture than humans, less familiar, and being able to do something like that. Like maybe if I made like a fairy city in the woods, it'd be really neat if if it had like all these Celtic patterns to it or something. Like you could do some really, really fun stuff that is going to just inform your building and keep that kind of like Minecraft block, pardon the pun, of being stuck and not knowing what to do next. If you're like, well, I'm planning this like Celtic, not city design, I kind of have to stick to it, and so then you have to like, where your roads are going to go, like that kind of stuff would be really, really cool. The other thing that I find really nice about it is that it really shows you how much texturing affects things like the roof. When the roof was all solid acacia block, yes, I built with acacia, it really stood out, and it took a long time to texture the roof, but it worked out fairly well compared to the original piece that I wanted to use for inspiration. So yeah, the overhead map really does help, especially the elevation, being able to see by slightly lighter grass blocks, where the hills are and things. It's really, really useful.
Yeah, I think the acacia roof, I'm looking at pictures of it in Discord right now, looks fantastic. I think that it
Thanks,
works.
man.
It works really well for the color palette of the area, and I think the acacia is toned down by the amount of other more natural sort of brown-looking woods that you've got in there, and the coarse
jungle
dirt
and
path being
spruce,
everywhere.
if you can believe it.
Yeah. No, I think it comes together pretty well as a combination.
From you, sir, I will take that as a very high compliment.
And yes.
So what have you been up to in Minecraft?
I have, in the survival guide world, I have not been surviving, but intentionally so. I made a video because I'm cataloging all of these different aspects of Minecraft for this museum project, and my brain started to think about stuff that you can't really catalog all that easily in an exhibit that you'd find in a museum, and stuff that museums probably wouldn't put on record, but stuff that I still thought was notable about Minecraft. And the main thing was death messages, because it's a concept I've had knocking around for a while, but I wasn't certain how to present it. There are so many different ways to die in Minecraft, and some often quite comedic death messages that show up when you do. So I died about 60 different ways for an episode of the Minecraft Survival Guide, which I subtitled the Minecraft Death Guide because it really was. And a lot of them are the same. You get slain by a zombie the same way you get slain by an Enderman or slain by anything else that does melee attacks. But then if you get killed by something using ranged attacks, you get shot by it instead. So I counted that as different, and I didn't want to go into all of the different permutations of you were shot by this while running from that, and so on and so forth, because that was just going to get a little bit too granular. But what I really wanted to get to and to show off was the ones that you don't see very often, and the ones that have particularly funny aspects to them. For example, did you know that if you are running away from something that's just recently attacked you and you die on a magma block, it will say, player name here, walked into the danger zone while trying to escape from something. Like that's
No, I didn't know that.
That's a really unique death message, and one I don't think I've ever seen because I'm careful around magma blocks and I don't normally die all that often. But the danger zone aspect of that is totally different from the death message you get from just standing on a magma block and taking damage without anything attacking you first. So sometimes those yield really interesting and quite funny results that not everyone's going to have seen. The same with, say, like the kinetic energy death message from flying into a cliff. We've probably all done that at this point. But then there are a few others that are just hilariously funny. So I decided to try and get all of those for an episode of the Survival Guide, which meant that my otherwise fairly good record of having only died about 20 times for a 2.5-year world is now up to over 80 because I just wanted to do them all for this episode of Survival Guide, and it was pretty fun. I'm not gonna lie, it was one of the more fun things I've done, and it baffled.
Are those customizable? Are those things that you can change?
You can change
with,
them,
a resource pack?
You can change them with a resource pack, yes. And some of them you can actually change quite individually based on what's happening. The thing that was interesting to me, that's probably interesting to nobody else, but I'll tell you anyway, just in case, is that when the death message I'm used to when you die in a lava pool somewhere is tried to swim in lava, right? It's Joel Duggan tried to swim in lava, but then I use the UK English resource pack because of a live stream I did a while ago where people were donating to charity for me to change my my interface language for a few minutes. And I changed it back to UK English after that because I thought that was going to be my default, but I was defaulting to US English the rest of the time. So some stuff shows up different, like cooked fish is baked cod in the UK English, and swam in lava instead of tried to swim in lava is how it says that death message in the UK English resource pack. And so I thought that it was just a different set of circumstances or that the Minecraft wiki had wrong information somehow. Turns out that was just my resource pack getting it slightly differently, which was...
I believe potatoes are jacket potatoes, too?
Yeah, they're jacket potatoes. Packed ice is also compressed ice. So anytime I get some packed ice in an episode, everyone's immediately confused and thinks I've got a fourth secret type of ice that I'm concealing from the rest of the world. But it's quite funny seeing the minute and subtle differences that there are throughout Minecraft when you're playing with a slightly different English language pack.
It's a good thing that leather... Because it's leather leggings, isn't it? They don't call them pants in Minecraft, do they?
Yeah, I think it is leggings. Yeah.
Yeah, because if it was pants, we'd know that would change in the UK.
Yeah, and I if it was, it'd be trousers or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Pair of leather trow, and I think the shovel turns up as a spade. I think it's a diamond spade in the English texture pack, but I think that's mostly it. The other thing I've been doing this week is something we talked about briefly in the render distance, and something that we plan on talking about later in this episode is that I started a Snapshot survival world with the intention of finding out how difficult it is to acquire bundles in the early game, and I'm also going to use it to test other things like finding amethyst geodes, which we did this weekend, and maybe go into building with and aging copper in survival and just kind of test how viable some of that stuff is right now, how quickly you can expect to find those features in a new survival world, with, of course, the proviso that some of that is going to change in the upcoming, changes to terrain generation and stuff like that. Like, I'm trying to find amethyst geodes with the current, the cave generation that we've all been used to from the last few updates, which is probably going to be very different by the time the Caves and Cliffs update comes out. But I thought it'd be interesting for now to take a look at how often you just stumble upon an amethyst geode and how easy it is to find a bundle when rabbits are somewhat scarce in the world. So I'll report more on these findings later, but I've been having a lot of fun doing it.
How we've changed our tune. I believe that I mentioned the thought of doing that last week, and you wanted to wait until they actually had terrain generation in the snapshots before starting up a world. Are you just going to accept the inevitable chunk borders and stuff like that when it happens?
I started this world in hardcore mode because I assumed it wasn't going to last very long, and I wanted it to feel disposable. And also my chat had been asking me to play hardcore Minecraft, and I'd been trying to convince them that I wouldn't play it any differently to how I normally played survival Minecraft, which is to sleep all the time and mostly avoid danger. But I think it's kind of an interesting experiment right now, and I sort of went, these features are intriguing me enough that I want to get in there and find out. So, I think especially stuff with like powder snow and mountain generation and stuff, I'm going to have to wait for that. But then I think there's going to be enough going on with the new cave generation, presumably if we see, beta versions of lush caves and dripstone caves happening around the same time, I'm going to be more focused on those at that point. So I think I got a little impatient, but I wanted to see what it was like to find a geode in the meantime.
I do want to do the same thing, although I don't think I'm going to go hardcore because knowing the way that I've been bouncing around in my 3-year-old, world with now a medieval build in it, nothing would kill me except for jumping off of a roof. I would think I had elytra. I would jump down 10 blocks and go double space tap to glide to a nice even splat, and that would be it.
Yeah, no, totally. Well, it becomes,
there goes the last 3 hours.
It becomes muscle memory in these older worlds. We're so used to it, I think, that It's like the instinct to immediately clear your inventory with a command because you've been playing in a creative world for a while and you just want all these items out of your inventory, and then you realize, oh wait, I'm in my 2-year survival world and I've just cleared all of my diamond and netherite stuff.
Yeah.
We'll talk more about my findings about bundles a little bit later because it ties in really well to an email that we got from somebody this week. But before we do that, we do have another snapshot change log for you guys. So let's take a look in the news. This is Java Edition Snapshot 20W46A, full changelog as usual on Minecraft.net, and as if in answer to last week's email about how frequently we're going to get snapshots, we have another snapshot this week, which is very exciting. For today's snapshot, it reads, we've changed most of the textures introduced in the previous snapshot. This is simply to test if these textures give a better experience in exploring and building. We're interested to hear what you think. Keep in mind that some textures might be reverted again or changed again in the future. So the main feature of this one, though, is Powder Snow, which we've already seen in the Bedrock Edition Minecraft beta, but it is worth noting now it's come to Java that a couple of things are different. First of all, Powder Snow is a trap block that causes any entity that walks into it to sink in it. You can pick up and place Powder Snow with a bucket. Wearing leather boots will prevent you from sinking into powder snow blocks, and if you leave a cauldron outside in falling snow, it will fill with powder snow, and then can be put into buckets and distributed from there. Standing in powder snow will slowly freeze an entity. This is a new freezing effect that's been added. Once frozen, freeze damage is done every few seconds to the frozen entity. Each piece of leather armor worn by the player, or presumably any mobs that can wear leather armor, causes an entity to freeze more slowly, and wearing a full set of leather armor prevents freezing entirely. Freezing also changes the appearance of your HUD hearts, your health meter, into some kind of frozen blue hearts, which looks pretty cool. Some other changes in 20W46A include the range in which a lightning rod attracts lightning has been doubled. Copper blocks are now crafted from 4 copper ingots, which was previously 9. Sky color now varies smoothly when moving between different biomes. Buttons that change value like difficulty can now be controlled using the mouse wheel. Clicking on a button that changes value while holding shift changes it back to the previous value. Debug world types can now be accessed while holding the Alt key, which was previously Shift, and the aforementioned texture changes. So there are texture changes for cut copper, the lightning rod, calcite, amethyst block, budding amethyst, tinted glass, the candle item icons, the item icons for copper ingots, amethyst shards, and bundles have also been changed. Last but not least, we have a few technical changes. They've removed the replace item command and added just an item command, which adds item modifiers, which reuse loot table function syntax to describe item modifications. Various other technical changes are in the changelog, including changes to loot tables and data packs. Further details in that link at Minecraft.net. There are also various bug fixes. The one standout of those to me was a bug that has prevented Endermen from getting mad at Endermites spawned using spawn eggs or the summon command. This will come up for anybody who's tried to build an Enderman farm in creative to test it out before they built it in survival and wondered why the Endermen aren't getting aggro at the Endermite that you've spawned in using a spawn egg. Previously, you just had to spam Ender Pearls, even if you were in creative mode, to get one to show up that they were actually going to get mad at. But now that's been fixed as of this snapshot.
The powder snow was the first thing that I messed with because I was streaming on Wednesday, and when the snapshot came out, we popped into it at the last, half an hour or so. I had already had a bunch of other blocks laid out, so I had a hard time spotting a lot of the texture changes, but powder snow being the new thing, I was messing around with it quite a bit. And I like everything about it except for the fact that you stick to the bottom like a honey block.
Yeah.
And I felt like, because you stick to the bottom if it's got a solid block underneath it. If it's got nothing underneath it, you go through.
Yeah, you fall through it.
Yeah, but if it's on, just because I just did one layer and I jumped on top of it and I sank in and then I couldn't get out. You just like jumping on a honey block, you basically stick to it. And I thought, one, that's the same as a honey block and not that different or useful. It also didn't feel good. If you got stuck like that as a player, I don't know how, because instantly you want to jump out of something, whether it's lava or water or whatever you fell in, you kind of want to hit space to get up.
Yeah.
And when that doesn't function, it doesn't feel good.
Mm-hmm.
And so my thought for that would be I should be able to climb out or swim up out of the block, albeit very slowly. Like kind of like how you come out of lava a lot slower than you come out of water.
Yeah.
I feel like powdered snow should be even slower. Because you do have a full 15 seconds before the frost damage starts to kill you.
Yeah.
And I thought that the frost damage UI, where the frosty crystals like on your car window come around the edge of the UI, your POV, and the slow zoom in, like all that stuff was a really nice touch. So if you are in the snow and you're taking some damage, they really thought about how to make that feel claustrophobic. And I think they did a good job without going to what previously they've done, which has resulted in some problems to the point where they've actually added a toggle for it, which is the dizzying effect, like going through nether portals or getting poisoned.
Yeah.
And I think that the slow zoom is much better than the wobble,
Yeah, I definitely agree. I really like the vignette that comes up when you're in powdered snow for long enough, like you said, the kind of frost on the corners of the glass on a cold day. I feel like the main problem with having a way for you to climb out, I think maybe it'd be easier if you could climb out if you had a solid block to one side of it in the same way that you can climb a ladder. But I feel like the problem with holding jump to climb out of powdered snow is that if you just hold jump while you're on the surface, you avoid falling through it entirely, and that's just going to lead to players avoiding the traps more easily. And this is being implemented with it being intended to be a trap block. So I think it's
that's true.
It's probably just a case of making sure the controls sort of line up with the intended functionality for it. Mobs apparently avoid it in this snapshot, which I don't think they did in the Bedrock beta. So right now it's only a trap for players. But I think it will eventually, aside from goats, because I think goats are supposed to intentionally, instinctively avoid it, I think it's going to be quite a neat way of trapping mobs eventually as well. To me, I feel like the weirdest thing, and this is maybe, again, something that just means I need to spend a bit more time with it, but it feels really weird placing a full block in the world using a bucket. A block that isn't liquid and immediately like flows around, right?
Yeah. I thought that was a strange thing too. And I guess to reinforce the trap block nature of it, you're not going to be able to carry around tons of this stuff to build with.
Exactly.
Because the buckets don't stack. And I guess to that effect, the powdered snow texture is only ever so slightly different than regular snow.
Yeah.
And you can still put a snow layer on top of it. But because of it's so close to it, one, it's meant to camouflage it so that you do fall into the trap. And two, there's no point in really using it to kind of like decorate with different kinds of snow, because it's really not going to look any different once you get more than a foot or two away from it. So, I just think it's strange that they're limiting its use by both the buckets and its collection. The way that you collect it is really odd too. I was expecting to go into mountains, see it in the mountains, and be able to just use a silk touch shovel to pick it up.
Yeah, and I expect you'll still be able to find it in mountain biomes. It's going to be part of the generation. But outside of that, it's also going to be quite hard to farm, especially on servers where people will typically sleep to skip the night, and that means that there is no real easy way to get hold of like weather changes, and you're only really going to find snow happening while it's raining. So I think it's going to be interesting to see where the balance lies there, and how easy it's going to be to farm, and how frequently people are going to want to farm it compared to, how exactly people are going to have that interact with their life on multiplayer servers. Let's take a look at the new textures next, though, because I feel like that is, to us at least, being both builders, probably the most significant change here. With the exception, I suppose, of copper being slightly cheaper to make blocks out of now. Having played a bit in survival, it's still a fair amount of effort to get hold of enough copper to make blocks. So I do sort of hope that in future we get a way to farm it more ways than just going mining. But again, this is a caving update. We're meant to be going caving for it. I'll argue that it's worth it going to find copper, especially when copper isn't used for all that much other stuff right now in the same way that iron is. But yeah, as far as the texture changes go, I'm surprised calcite changed and not tough for a start. I kind of felt like we were tough on tough last week, and calcite was the one that I think we were both happier with. But if anything, I really like the new calcite texture. It feels more quartz than quartz to me. It's got that kind of crystalline structure still part of it, but it feels a lot softer now in a way that makes a lot of sense to me. What do you feel about the calcite change?
I'm pretty sure that I've got it on record of me going, "Ooh, I like that change!" Like
Uh-huh.
immediately when I logged into my Snapshot world, because I didn't create a new one. I just updated the old one that I had
Yeah.
placed a bunch of blocks in Creative, and I had placed a fair bit of calcite. It's still, I think I lined it up with some other blocks, and it works a little bit better, but not as smoothly as one would expect. I think the issue is less I like the texture. I think that the angle of it is going to be hard to deal with. I kind of wonder what it would look like if the flow, the direction of the texture was more vertical as
Yeah.
opposed to like the 30-degree angle that they've got it on.
Yeah.
Because I think that no matter how well you blend it into whatever other blocks you're using, unless you're using a hard line there, like, up against an oak log or something, you're going to see that edge of the block.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if the reason that Tough wasn't updated is I'm wondering if they're struggling with it. Like, I'm wondering if that texture is proving challenging. I imagine it would be, because I mean, I'm quick to say Tough wasn't my favorite, but do I have a solution for that? No, I don't.
Yeah.
I don't imagine it's easy when you're trying to balance something that's between cobblestone and something else and all that kind of stuff. I thought the amethyst blocks, I think I like them better in terms of they don't have the same sort of grid-like look to them. When you put a bunch of them together, they sort of looked like they had little balls or little bumps
Mm-hmm.
in the cross sections where they would meet. Similar to how glazed terracotta will create a pattern when you put four of them together the right way.
Yeah.
And it does that less now. But then I also feel like it went way high contrast, and so it feels more like retro Minecraft than like a modern block.
It feels quite sharp to me now, and that's the high contrast at work there. I think it feels a little bit more crystalline, but if anything, I sort of preferred the older amethyst texture because it might have been a little bit easier to disguise and felt slightly closer to the other sort of jewel blocks that we have right now, like stuff like emerald blocks, for example. Like I feel like it was maybe a little closer to those. And the texture in a geode, naturally is already kind of provided for me by all of the crystal buds and clusters that are everywhere. So I feel like the regular amethyst texture could go back to what it was, and I'd be perfectly fine with it. I think it would be a bit smoother that way.
I didn't have a problem with it before, really.
Yeah.
I out of curiosity, how do you make an amethyst block? Is it 9 shards?
It's 4. It's a 2x2 of shards, yeah.
So, opportunity there. I would love to see an amethyst block akin to redstone, lapis, gold, emerald, with a 9x9, with a 3x3, like a full 9 shards.
Like a smooth amethyst block or something.
Yeah, like a polished stone block, like a gem, like that. Because we don't have one in purple, right?
No, we don't. Yeah, that's
like that would be really cool.
Missing from the current spectrum for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be fun.
I like the idea now actually of having them all like lined up like a rainbow, and amethyst definitely kind of fits that bill. Yeah.
Yeah.
Outside of that, we got a few changes to like item textures. I think are the most significant ones. I feel like candle icons being a notable change, and
look great.
Yeah, and they look great. And this to me feels like also a prompt to the player, because the old candle icon just had one candle, whereas this one has 2, and now it kind of prompts the player that you can place more than one of these in a group, right? And it's interesting to me that one of the outliers here is they are most similar, I think, to sea pickles in terms of the formation that you can place them, but the sea pickle icon is just a flat sort of texture of what the side of a sea pickle looks like, right? It's kind of like it's like you're looking at a glass pane. It's very kind of flat and one-dimensional.
Yep.
So I wonder if maybe there's still room for them to update some of the older item icons with more of this style, because it feels a little bit more like a kind of pixel art RPG kind of style that they're applying to some of these newer items. The bundles are the other example of that, right?
Yeah, I would say it feels more like a modern pixel art game, not a retro pixel art game.
Yeah.
With the candles and the bundles. We'll get into the bundles later, but yeah, like I think that's the thing. They have the capability of making them look a lot nicer, and I think easier on the eyes. It helps them pop off the inventory a little bit more. Especially now that people are using different kinds of inventory backgrounds, like darker UI, that kind of thing. From like texture packs. Like I think that having the way that they did the candles, I noticed it immediately. Although I think the shards are different too. Like the amethyst shards are also a little bit different. I know copper ingots got to change in the inventory as well. they looked good. I don't know if the other one looked bad. I think maybe the new one is just a little bit shinier, perhaps.
Yeah.
I did notice the changes in one of the copper things. I couldn't really tell on the blocks. I didn't spend a lot of time. I confess I only spent about 20 minutes in the snapshot because I was mostly exploring the new stuff as opposed to the old stuff.
Yeah.
In terms of functions. But the lightning rods are exactly the opposite of what I thought they needed to be last week. I was like, woof, those are bright. We should tone those down. And they turned them up.
Yeah.
They are brighter and less copper looking. So I feel like there needs to be maybe more of a balance there, and I'd like to see them, toned down. I mean, I know people can end up making their own textures, and so sometimes these discussions end up being kind of like a stalemate, but I feel like the copper stuff should be less shiny, because having built so much with acacia recently, I threw in some acacia next to copper, and for the polished copper, like the bright blocks and the grid, like the copper,
Yeah.
they are nearly the same color as acacia. Like they're different only in the texture is different, but the color, the hue is nearly the same.
Yeah.
And I feel like they should maybe make it more muted and less shiny. But again, like that's just it could be just Minecraft being too literal currently with copper in terms of what copper looks like in the real world, and maybe they need to just put on their quote unquote Minecraft hat and maybe change it a little bit to be something unique.
Maybe. And it's still obviously very early days for the snapshot, so I expect we'll see these things change a few more times.
Constructive feedback.
Yes, as feedback comes in. Speaking of feedback, we've had a fair amount of it from you folks listening to the last few episodes, and there's some really, really interesting emails coming up about all of the snapshot features and some stuff that people have thought, people's imaginations have been lit on fire by some of these new things and actually getting to use them. If you'd like to email the show, the email address is spawnchunkmail@gmail.com. So please send your emails to that address if you want them to be considered for reading on the show.
First email is from Dafradu. Brush copper with honey. Hello, Joel and Pix, long-time listener here. I've been thinking about your conversation about copper and how you should be able to right-click copper with honeycombs to wax them. Well, I had a bit of a eureka moment. What if you could use the brush they are adding with archaeology to brush the copper blocks with honeycombs? I think this would be a very good way to be able to wax the copper blocks without actually having to mine your entire roof. I think it would also add an interesting mechanic instead of just magically clicking on blocks with your bare hands. And plus, it adds a new feature to a feature of the update that was a bit overlooked. I would love to hear your thoughts on this. Happy chunking from Croatia. First off, Croatia, awesome. Hi, that's very, very cool. I love hearing when people are from faraway lands. I think there are two sides here. Do you want to chime in, or should I just lay it out?
Go for it. You had a look at this email before I did, so I think you've got some thoughts prepared.
I think the brush makes sense for both the reasons that you mentioned, but it presents two problems. First off, if I'm doing a lot of copper building, I now have to have two valuable inventory slots taken up by the honeycomb and the brush. Mm-hmm. which I may have to constantly look up how to make. Similar to having to bring a hoe and a pair of shears around when you don't really want to, depending on what you're doing. But I think that from a immersion point of view, it makes sense. That's a really cool game mechanic. It's utilizing something they're adding into the game for something else. So from a gameplay mechanic, I prefer the honeycomb in the hand. To me, I would just kind of roll my eyes and go, okay, Minecraft, I guess this is how we do it.
Yeah.
I just find it a little bit of, part of me finds it amusing, the idea of walking around with a honeycomb and just hitting things with it and magically changing how they work in the world. But, the brush for immersion, I think goes a long way.
Yeah.
I think they won't do it because it would open up the door to what I really want, is that I also want to use the paintbrush to paint wood in Minecraft. Mojang, get on it, please. Because if I'm gonna have to carry it to paint copper with wax, boy howdy do I want to be able to paint wood any color I want.
Yeah.
So I don't think they'll go down that road for the pure landslide that they would open up.
Yeah.
Of painting stuff.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. Much as I like the idea of using the brush for more stuff, and I think Ulraf, the developer who's working on archaeology and has kind of championed that as a feature, is quite keen on the brush having a much broader use than just for archaeological digs. So I expect there will be other uses for the brush that will apply to a broader range of gameplay here. I'm not certain this is the right implementation for it because, like you said, it just kind of adds this unnecessary middleman as far as what we're used to with current Minecraft mechanics. And I think just right-clicking on stuff rather than having, like, you're right-clicking on stuff with the correct tool and also having something else as, like, a satellite resource in your inventory that's being used up as you go doesn't quite make the right sort of sense. It's sort of like, you know, if you don't use an infinity bow, running out of arrows in your inventory, but you're not seeing that happen because the arrows aren't in your offhand or on your hotbar at the time, so it kind of comes as a surprise when you run out of that stuff, and that's kind of a little bit inconvenient sometimes. I think the same would be true if you had this ever-depleting honey block or honeycomb resource in your inventory, and every 64 blocks you'd have to stop and get more or less.
Yeah.
For me, I'm expecting it wouldn't be too much of a problem with inventory because as you're waxing some of these blocks, it's probably going to be the case that the blocks have just been there for a while. You're done with the build already, and you're just coming through with the brush and freezing them in a specific state.
That's true.
But I think, I'm not entirely certain that having the middleman of the brush here is going to be the best decision for, you know, waxing copper without picking it up and crafting with it again. But I do really like the idea of using the brush for more stuff, and I'm really hoping that we'll start to see a few more ideas like this coming to the forefront that are going to give more life to the brush for people who don't feel like archaeology is their thing.
Ginger Lily in our chat is giving us 2 demerit points for no wax on, wax off jokes.
Yes, unfortunately, yes, we are.
Missed opportunity.
Exactly, we need to consult the Karate Kid for that one. Moving on, let's get another email in here, which touched on another aspect of 117. This one comes in from Mentat, who is a landscape artist member of our Discord. The subject being candles and graphical bundles. This is also something that was brought up in a kind of subsequent snapshot changelog. Was the bundle GUI has actually changed again. So we'll dive into this. Mentat says, I like the graphical representation of bundles because my ADD makes it difficult for me to translate text from the screen into something my brain can understand sometimes, where the graphical representation is an instant translation. I use Shulker tooltips for this very reason. I'm also looking forward to candles a lot because I built a 50-block tall, 40 by 90, 3-level maze completely out of red nether brick and black stone. I've lit up everything above and below ground in a 200-block radius, so the maze is the only place where mobs can spawn. I fought really hard with getting enough light that players can see without removing spawnable spaces, and candles are the perfect solution for me. I've been using soul torches and lanterns, but I had to use so many of them that I sort of lost the visual effect I was looking for inside the maze. Aesthetically and functionally, candles work great. Enki, the world shaper. The world outside may be infinite, but it's mine to shape. Another sign-off. There we go. Very good. Yeah, so thank you so much for the email there, Enki. I think the candle thing is great. Having more adjustable light sources, more limited light sources like this is great, and I think candles are a great solution for people who didn't want the sort of immersion breaking side of things where you had to put things like sea pickles everywhere if you wanted lower light levels. I think it makes a lot of sense to have candles, and this maze sounds fantastic, I should say. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see people build more with limited light when we have candles.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, especially for someone diving into a medieval realm right now, candles are going to be fantastic for mood lighting and just above ground control for that kind of stuff without having to worry about like a campfire. Or if you don't want a blue fire or a blue lantern, we now have this like a much more color controlled, both in its natural looking light as far as Minecraft vanilla goes. But then it's also, you can have them in any color you want. If it's a spooky castle, you have black candles. You know, if it's a more of a light colored, maybe an elven, build, you could have like blue candles or something. Like there's lots of options there, which is nice. I'm curious with candles whether we're going to have options to put them on top of things where they'll look a little bit better. Because sometimes when you want to put them on top of a fence post, 4 candles look odd.
Yeah.
Without something to sit on.
It was a funny point about you saying that the lightning rod looked really good as a candle holder. It looks good as one candle holder, but that's not going to provide a high light level. And then if you add 4 on top of it, they're all just sort of balancing on the very edge of the texture or sometimes off it completely, which is a bit unfortunate.
2 looked okay. Like, you might not notice it if you don't look too closely with 2, but yeah, once you get up into 4, it's not it doesn't really work that way. You'd have to kind of have well, again, see, it doesn't work because you can't do like trap doors as tables with anything underneath them because they take up the whole block. So like it becomes a little bit trickier though. One of the things I did mention a little bit more in our render distance, which I wanted to get into now, what can a modern style builder do with candles for lighting options? Like if you were building a modern city, I'm not putting candles everywhere unless you want like a birthday cake or like you specifically want like a candelabra in the middle of a table.
Or like candles around a bathtub kind of thing. Like there are situations in modern life where we still use candles, but they're not going to be out on the streets for for people wandering past, you know?
No, but I think it makes for a really interesting idea for people that do want to do custom texture packs because of the way that candles work, because of the different instances of the block. You get like 4 different versions of a candle. So you could do 4 different models of a lamp, right? If you wanted, you could have like, desk lamp, like living room lamp, maybe like a full floor lamp size. And it just depends on, and how you want to do it. And the bigger the lamp, the more light it would put out. So it might work very similar to how a candle would work. I really want to experiment with this because candles would be something that I can't see us using a lot of in my modern city build. And I would like to maybe not use end rods and carpets for modern lamps. Like it'd be nice to actually have a couple of things that might look a little bit more pleasing. Now you can't put candles horizontally. However, you can make them float. So it does, like, again, it opens up for some options. Like maybe you turn a single candle into a light bulb, right? That you could then hang from a chain. Like there's a couple of different things that could be very, very fun with candles for people that want to get into texture packs. Because I really find I'm always very curious about blocks like this that have multiple block states. Because it opens up a whole bunch of opportunities for things like that when you want to have some custom, even adventure maps, people that are doing, unique experiences, that kind of thing.
Yeah, you could easily make like a really stylish looking lamp block model, almost like one of those Art Nouveau, like Tiffany lamp kind of situations. And then the more candles you add to it, the model itself doesn't change, but the brightness just goes up. And, you could have 4 models as the same thing, but then you could just as easily have it be, maybe if you wanted a more modern kind of take on it, like computer monitors, for example, where it could be like different orientations of monitors, and each different candle that you add makes the monitor slightly bigger, and then it produces like a brighter glow from it. Because, goodness knows that my monitors light up this room when I don't have any of the other lights on. So I think that's an interesting point. Going back to the bundles thing, and again, more on bundles in this week's like main conversation, but the whole inventory GUI has now changed so that it looks sort of like a microcosm of your player inventory now, right? It adds an inventory slot every time. The item sprites are the same. It's no longer a text-based thing. It is a bordered set of, inventory slots, more or less, which you can't interact with right now, at least, but it does at least allow you to see stuff in a style that is visually consistent. And I think that's the most important thing right now, is that the text thing worked okay for me, but like shulker boxes, it's difficult to see exactly what you've got there, and as this email says, it's kind of difficult for some people to process, whereas I think seeing, I've got 9 rotten flesh in here and 6 sea pickles and 5 pieces of string, it's a lot easier to understand that as shorthand because we already work with that system.
I agree, and I think it's a good point to bring out to point out how, visual comprehension challenges are solved with this problem, but then also gives players an opportunity to to parse it easier. People that don't have to worry about those kind of challenges and stuff.
Yeah.
Speaking of those that have some visual or vision impairment. We requested last week, if anybody out there had something to say about this, to write in, and we got one. Danielle, I believe, response to visual impairment questions regarding bundles. Hello, guys. Love the show. I always listen to it while working on my survival server. I wanted to answer your question regarding bundles and visual impairment. I am legally blind, so for me, pictures of blocks is always better than a list of text. The different colors and shapes of the blocks make it easier to distinguish than the text, which all looks the same to me. However, my colorblind friend would say differently. For him, a wall of text is best because it can be challenging to differentiate between blocks that have similar hues. Unfortunately, I think the problem of visual impairment in gaming is largely unsolvable due to the varied nature of these disabilities. The problem and solutions often overlap between the different disabilities. All this being said, they could simply have an option in the accessibility settings to choose between text or graphics for shulkers and bundles. Thanks for your time. Love the show. I agree. I think an options tab for this sort of thing would be a great solution for vision-related disabilities, and as well as giving players just a preference, if you prefer one over the other for whatever reason, whether it's Mentat from our Discord, or whether it's Daniel. It's all like having options is better, and I think that the visual thing is probably the better way to go for default, but giving players the option to go to a wall of text should they choose would be a good option too.
Yeah, I'm definitely in favor of more settings, and I think it's a difficult balance for the developers to strike, because I expect they don't want these settings to get too granular, but when it comes to accessibility stuff, that's always worth listening to, in my opinion. So yeah, it will be interesting to see what they decide to do with it. Ultimately, I think the visual interface they have right now works for a lot of people, but if it works for everybody, if it doesn't work for everybody, what the I guess like the cost benefit side of that is, much as I don't want to reduce it to that kind of problem, I think ultimately it comes down to how much effort it's worth putting in and how many people are really going to be affected by certain issues. I think a toggle should be easy enough, considering that they've already had both versions present in the game, so they've obviously tried both versions. I think it wouldn't hurt to do something like that for bundles at the very least, because they're a newer feature, and I'd like to see it done for shulker boxes as well, but at least in this case players have the option of using a data pack like Shulker Box Tooltips, which already exists and has a similar function. So I feel like if the developers don't necessarily come up with the solution, then some people from the community probably will. And that's where I think the community can really start to share resources when it comes to accessibility stuff. So either way, I think you're going to be catered for, whether it's by the developers themselves or by some well-meaning folks in the community who are going to try their hardest to make it accessible for you.
We're going to have one more email discussion, but it's going to be in the render distance from landscape artist member Kokorodaki. I always get that name wrong. The potential of Dungeons and Dragons in Minecraft. So stay tuned for that if you're a patron for the post-show chat. For now, though, you have a bundle of a topic to kick us off with this week.
I certainly do, yes. And thankfully, we got an email related to this as well, which comes in from Crystal Keeper 5. Regarding the bundle recipe usage. It says, Dear Jonny and Joel, I recently loaded up a temporary Snapshot survival world to get a feel of the new features and how they may affect core survival gameplay. That is something we have in common. One of the first things I tried doing was making a bundle. It took about an hour and a half to find rabbits. I'm all in favor of bringing new life into old features by revitalizing their use in survival, but do you think rabbit hide is the right call, considering its rarity? Or do you think that Mojang could make rabbits more common? I would love to hear your thoughts. From within the pixels, Crystal Keeper 5. So, like I said earlier, we've been doing a little bit of research over on my Twitch channel. I started a new world in survival myself on Thursday's stream with the aim of gearing up and basically immediately heading out to find bundles. And like our correspondent here, I had a single bundle within about 90 minutes. And that 90 minutes includes, going mining for iron, getting a shield, getting a little bit of early game armor and tools and that kind of stuff. And I went through a taiga looking for rabbits, eventually ended up at a desert, which is where I scored most of the rabbit hide I needed. Within the first 2 hours of the stream, I think I had enough rabbit hide for 4 bundles. So once you get to a desert or a snow plains, it's not that difficult to get hold of them. It's just making a beeline for those biomes may not quite fit with everybody's playstyle, is what I feel like so far. if you're playing the way I play, which is to get a bed immediately, aim to sleep through the nights, and so forth, it's actually just as difficult to acquire string, which is the other the other ingredient in a bundle right now. You need 6 rabbit hide and 2 string, and you have to get lucky with spider encounters in caves if you don't want to let them spawn on the surface and ruin your night. So, yeah, I actually found that I had all of the rabbit hide I needed before I'd encountered any spiders that had dropped string, which was pretty funny. But yeah, I'm on the fence about the rarity of rabbits and rabbit hide, because I don't know if I want rabbits spawning absolutely everywhere, because it's kind of nice that they're limited to certain biomes, but I think most people aren't going to want to go out of their way to find rabbit hide to get bundles unless they are convinced about the bundle's use first. And that's the main stumbling block, I think, right now, is that not everybody is convinced by bundles as a feature, so people aren't going out and trying it. is the main problem. I have a feeling that they could maybe tweak the recipe so it requires less rabbit hide, or have rabbits drop hide more frequently, but I think right now a lot of people see farming rabbit hide as a tedious activity, and they're avoiding bundles because of that, and they're not justifying going out and making bundles for themselves because they already think that rabbit hide is going to be difficult to find. So it's kind of a catch-22 going on here.
Yeah.
How do you feel about bundles as somebody who, I think you've tinkered around with them in creative, but I don't think you've quite done what I have and started a snapshot world in survival yet, right?
No, not yet. That's on my to-do list, though. I feel like, to echo your point about the recipe, one of the other things they could do is maybe have it be a combo recipe, maybe 3 rabbit hide, 3 leather, and string.
Yeah.
You know, like have it be part of the recipe, something that you probably already have by the time you find a rabbit, because you've probably killed a cow, you know, that sort of thing. So yeah, I think that it does need to be more accessible considering what it does.
Yeah.
If it was more powerful, I would say maybe rabbit hide is, you know, a good kind of gateway for it. I don't think it really solves a lot of UI storage problems, or inventory storage problems. I should use the right term.
Mm-hmm.
I think it helps clean up your inventory quite quickly. I think you still have to figure out what to do with all that stuff later. Like when you get back to your chests and you want to empty the bundle, you still need, if you've got 16 different kinds of things in that bundle, all adding up to 64 items, then you need 16 slots in whatever chest you're dumping it into to get it all out.
Yeah. I have thoughts about this that I will get into a little later.
Yeah. And I think in order to make it more useful, then this is probably something that's not going to happen with the core of how the game is coded, I would imagine. But I would think that if they held more than 64 items per bundle, it would be better. But then that presents a UI problem. Like you don't want 128 separate items, you know, showing up on the screen. Yeah. That's a problem. What if they stacked to 96 or 128? I say 96 first because I don't think 128 would fit in the UI box. Like I don't think we can have 3 digits. I think it's only 2. Because of it would just get too confusing, and you wouldn't be able to see the graphic of the bundle. So that's another idea. I know this is something you brought up previously, and I don't want to steal your thunder, but how bundles are interacted with after they leave your inventory, I think could also be a big thing. If that's where you're going, I'll let you go in that direction. The only other thing that I can think of that would be improvements in terms of, if they're going to stay the way that they are, like they're not going to be more useful than just clean up inventory. I don't know if I like the black background in the UI. It feels odd. I'm surprised it doesn't match the gray inventory UI, which may be the plan eventually. But I think it would be even better, as someone that does use the Shulker Box tooltip very readily. The tooltip on the Shulker Box background matches the color that you've dyed the Shulker Box.
Right, yeah.
And I think it would just make sense to have a brown tint to when you're looking inside the bundle.
Yeah. Like, if it's not even going to be like a graphical representation of the bundle in that sense, it's at least like thematically tying it in a little more, right? Yeah.
It's brown, and it'll stand out for people that are, have vision impairment. Like it'll stand out against the gray, so like your 2 boxes don't bleed into one another, that sort of thing.
Yeah. I think that's an interesting note, and certainly there is room for more visual refinements to take place before they're finalized. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see which direction they go. So I made a massive Twitter thread basically sharing some of my findings from the stream. So I'll kind of go through some of that point by point here. So farming rabbit hide is much easier in a desert or a snow plains than it is anywhere else. And I tried desert. I didn't get as far as the snow plains, but it comes down to how many other passive mobs are spawning in the area. And in deserts, that is nothing else. You don't really get any other, you don't get cows and sheep and stuff spawning in deserts at all. You just get rabbits. And I think snow plains are kind of similar, although you might find other animals wandering out from other surrounding biomes. I'm pretty sure you get Arctic foxes here and there as well. So you're probably going to want to go to a desert or a snow plains. They will spawn in taiga and flower forests, but so will literally everything else. So you're probably not going to find too many rabbits there. I found maybe 2 rabbits in the taiga biome, and the annoying thing right now is that adult rabbits only spawn one at a time, and they can spawn with 1 or 2 baby rabbits, but the baby rabbits won't give you rabbit hide until they grow up. So in that case, you either have to decide to breed them, in which case you probably want to put them in a hole in the ground so they don't go anywhere, or you just wait for them to grow up and then kill them. Maybe you circle back around to where they were, but then they could have moved very easily at that point. So it gets a little bit difficult just having to kill rabbits one at a time, whereas with a herd of cows, there's usually maybe like 3 or 4 that pack spawn together, and you can get leather from all of them. So I don't know if that maybe could do with being changed, or if there's just a chance for them to spawn with a litter of smaller ones instead of just one adult rabbit. Rabbit's movement is difficult to keep up with, but you can counter that by holding a carrot or a dandelion in your offhand on Java Edition. At least I don't think you can really do that in Bedrock. But if you hold a dandelion, they will hop up to you just normally and just sit there, which is great because then you can kill them, which seems like quite a brutal thing to do. It sort of feels like every rabbit kill is a betrayal at that point, but it makes the process of farming rabbit hide that much easier once you are at the sort of rabbit spawning ground. Once you're in the desert or the snow plains, as long as you've got a dandelion on you, you can farm rabbit hide relatively easily. And so that's the main tip I have, is go to a desert, get dandelions, and then walk around with a sword in one hand and a dandelion in the other, and you'll be fine. So I killed 71 rabbits over the course of the stream. I got 30 rabbit hide from that. The first few, it felt like, oh gosh, we're not going to get any because they just didn't drop any rabbit hide. But I don't know exactly what the percentage is. It isn't listed on the Minecraft wiki, but I'd say it's about a 30% chance of getting rabbit hide. And 30 rabbit hide was enough for 5 bundles, and I think 5 is more than enough. Because after a certain point, they start to suffer from diminishing returns, where now the bundles are cluttering your inventory and not the items that the bundles are meant to be resolving. I really feel like 2 or 3 is probably the optimal number that you want. In the end, I ended up with 1 for miscellaneous stuff I'd picked up, because this was early game Minecraft still, so it was like the 3 sugarcane that I wanted to take back in case I want to start a sugarcane farm somewhere, occasional mob drops like bones and string later and that kind of stuff. And then I had 1 that was food. And obviously early game food, before you establish like a cow farm or whatever, is going to be typically a variety of whatever you can grab. And just like bundling all of that into one bag so that you don't have 7 different types of food in your inventory in early game works really well. So that is one of the things that I would highly recommend using bundles for. Once you've got hold of them. You're also going to have a lot of cooked rabbit meat if you've been wandering around slaughtering rabbits to get the rabbit hides. So, yeah, that wasn't too bad for me. And I feel like maybe they could have rabbits drop hide more frequently, or tweak the recipe so it needs less rabbit hide. But ultimately, once you've got a few of these, you don't need like the army of them that you have of shulker boxes, for example. You really don't need them. It's really for tidying up early game clutter. And it feels very good to just be able to right-click your way through the inventory and clean stuff up. And I think the problem right now is that players are seeing them as Mojang's attempt to solve the inventory problem. And I'm using giant air quotes around that because there is not one inventory problem that's going to be solved by a magic bullet. There are so many tweaks that people would like to inventory. And these are certainly not meant to be early game shulker boxes. And the problem is that shulker boxes are the only type of portable inventory upgrade we have had in recent updates to Minecraft, so it's the only point of comparison people can use. But bundles are not that. And I think the problem right now is we're still trying to compare them to shulker boxes. They don't do the same thing. They are pocket organizers. They are not magical bags of holding. So I think my previous comparison makes the most sense. They are basically, they're not meant to be like a bigger junk drawer. They are meant to be organizers for your junk drawer. They are little dividers, so you can put all of the batteries in one place and all of the miscellaneous bits of plastic and screws in another place, and then you don't have to go rifling through the entire thing. The problem then becomes, as you've already pointed out, you have to empty that entire junk drawer into a chest in order to... No, not even into a chest, into your own inventory before you can then put it into a chest. And I think this is the problem with bundles right now, is that they are... Like, your inventory always has to be used as the middleman. You can have a bundle in a chest. You can use a bundle on items within any inventory, be it chest, shulker box, whatever. But then when you empty the bundle again, all of the stuff ends up in your inventory. And I think that's one of my major like wish lists for bundle improvements in future, is that they should unpack into the container they're being stored in. Because the way you unpack a bundle is it's in an inventory already, and then you right-click on it, and it empties into the player's inventory, even if that bundle is currently in a chest. I feel like it should unpack into the chest if it's stored there already. And I don't think there is currently a way of holding the bundle in your hand. So there's no ambiguity about which inventory it's in. It is definitely in one place or the other. And I think that's how you get around some of the problems people are having right now with using them, which is once this thing gets full, to empty it back out again, to get the one item I need out of it, I have to then completely flood my inventory with junk. I think a great way of handling stuff like this is, you know, the way people have a bunch of slots already kind of marked out in a chest for this is a row of like single pieces of rotten flesh, so that when you shift click rotten flesh from your inventory, it lines up exactly with the stacks that you've already kind of earmarked for it.
Yeah, that's precisely how I play.
Exactly.
100%.
That's what I think bundles should do, is that if you put it in a chest and then you right-click on it, it just stacks all of the stuff that you had in the bundle into the places that are already marked out for it in a chest, and if there isn't one already, it just adds new stacks to that chest. But I think if you're going, say, mining with it, and you've got, 16 iron ore, maybe 32 copper, a little bit of gold, a little bit of redstone, you go back to your valuables chest with that bundle, you put the bundle in, you right-click the bundle, all of that stuff gets stacked away without you having to use the middleman of your inventory to manage that. I feel like that makes so much sense, and that's not currently the functionality they have, and so I think unpacking them into another inventory, the inventory that they're currently being stored in, just makes a whole lot more sense to me.
Yeah, no, I would say that would solve a very frustrating problem of like, you want to take this bundle full of junk back to your home base and dump it quickly and not spend 5-10 minutes sorting it all out and changing all of your current, because if you've got a chest full of, or an inventory full of blocks you're currently building with that you don't want to put away, but you then have to put them away in order to get the stuff out of the bundle, that just seems tedious. It's like a website that has 4 clicks when you need 1. You know what I mean? Like that's the kind of UI frustration I think I would feel there. I would like to see, as Fixit is pointing out in our live chat, better hopper interaction.
Yeah.
Not just plopping the bundle into the hopper and have it go straight through into a chest. It would be nice if they could be unloaded. It would be slow. If there's 64 items in there, then it's going to take the same amount of time as 64 hoppers. I guess 65 items with the bundle included.
Yes.
Going through the hopper. Something that I was thinking about that I don't know because I have not tried is if you put a bundle in a hopper, can you then vary the signal strength of that hopper that would be read by a comparator by having the bundle full of stuff? So I'm wondering if bundles for redstone people are going to add a different kind of item filter.
Yeah, I mean that could be kind of interesting, because you've got the potential for adding items within items at that point. It makes it quite interesting. And bundles themselves, once you have a full bundle, it becomes effectively a non-stackable item, right? So
Right.
yeah, there is some variance there, and I'm not certain quite how that's going to work for hoppers. But again, it depends how bundles end up interacting with hoppers if they do.
It's one or the other. Yeah, like if the bundle is going to be empty, well, I guess it depends if it's in a hopper, but I guess a filter system would have to have two hoppers stacked on top of one another. So yeah, if it's going to be emptied by the hopper, then that's one thing. If it's not going to be emptied by a hopper, then it could potentially have like an interaction where it gets a different signal or something like that.
Yeah.
Like I haven't thought about it too hard because I'm not that technical in terms of the redstone, but it feels like something the redstone community could have a field day with.
Yeah, one other interesting interaction between bundles and hoppers, which again requires the middleman of the player's inventory, but there is a way you can do this where if you have a full bundle, let's say for example you have a full bundle with like 5 or 6 different items but all different stack sizes. If you fill up all of the rest of the slots of your inventory with something else, say a stack of cobblestone that you've got on you, and then you right-click on the bundle, the player throws all of the items from the bundle onto the floor, in the same way that you do when you are crafting something but you don't have enough space to store the crafted stuff in your inventory again. You throw the ingredients on the floor. And so one way of doing that without having bundles interact with hoppers could be to have an area where you are standing above a hopper and you fill up your inventory with something else, you right-click on the bundle, and then that throws all of the items into the hopper just by the player getting rid of them. You just kind of throw them out onto the ground. So that is one way of doing that. The problem then becomes the variety of items because they won't all stack into the hopper, and so everything is slowly just draining through the hopper until, with 64 items, you probably wouldn't get to the point where they had the 5-minute despawn timer come into effect, but you'd be worried that there was just all of this loose stuff on the ground. So again, like stuff like hopper minecarts could drain those through faster, and there are various solutions to that. But there is a way, a very analog feeling way that you can get bundles to interact with hoppers already, but it just means throwing all of that stuff onto the ground. Next up on my wish list for future bundle improvements is the one we've been talking about already, really, but color coding them. Dyeing them would make it 100% better. You can rename them in an anvil, as you can with most Minecraft items, and that helps with organization. But I'm finding that once I've put a few bundles, like say I've sort of earmarked bundles in my head for like, okay, this one's going to be food, this one's going to be, ores and stuff like that, or smelted ingots, this one's going to be miscellaneous mob drops, right? Once they're in your inventory and you've run around a mine shaft for a little while, I can't remember what order those are in, and that might be down to my own inventory organization, but I really think color coding them will just allow you to do that stuff at a glance instead of having to, eyeball what's in which bag and hover over each of the inventories to find out. I feel like it's a little bit neater and a little bit easier just to have the stuff color-coded. Plus, aesthetically, it's going to look nicer. So dyeing them would probably make them 100% better. The other thing, the last thing that I kind of thought about when we were searching for a geode on another stream, I really feel like advanced tooltips in Java Edition should show the amount of items that are currently in a bundle over its max capacity. So like the way it currently displays durability. If you have advanced tooltips turned on in Java Edition, you can see the items, the tool's durability as a numeric value instead of just the progress bar of durability. And it really helps with bundles because they have such a small stack size to know exactly how much space is left. At one point, I think I had 27 lapis, and I was looking at a bundle and I thought, okay, that bar looks like well above halfway. There's no way this 27 lapis is going to fit. Let me try it anyway. I tried it anyway and it did. And I thought, well, it would have been so easy for me to just hover over it and see it has 32 of 64 items already in here. Let me just add this extra 27 in because I know that's still going to fit. I feel like as Minecraft players, we're so used to figuring out how much of something, like you're used to dividing stuff up into 8s and 64s and stuff like that. I really think it's easy for us to determine that stuff from numbers rather than mentally trying to add up. Okay, I have 5 string, 7 rotten flesh, 3 stone, 2 sticks, a few glass panes, and like that's not fast. It's not very easy to do. Whereas if it just says 34 items out of 64, okay, I can still fit 30 items in that.
Yeah.
It becomes a lot easier to do that way. And I actually put that on the Minecraft suggestions Reddit because I didn't see it really mentioned anywhere else. But I really think it's going to help if you have a numerical value that you can look at that says, this is how many items are in this bundle already.
Yeah, I do that with my tools as well. I use the advanced tooltips because it also helps, like, just with people, on stream saying like, "Oh, your pickaxe is almost dead." And you go, "No, it's not."
Oh, I know that feeling, Joel. I know that feeling very well.
We're fine. We're fine. We're all fine.
We're professionals. We're used to this, especially with netherite stuff. When it looks like it's got like, it looks like it's almost dead, and then you look at it and it actually has 300 durability left. It's like the little bar can only take you so far at that point. I will quickly point out that one of the problems I think with bundles right now is new players not knowing that they exist, and this was an interesting topic of conversation that got brought up in the stream. Was it's all very well players who are kind of in the know, people who've been looking forward to some of these features being added and have watched the videos about them or played around in the snapshots, knowing that bundles are out there and that you have to go and kill rabbits to find them. But the average player starting out is not necessarily going to be able to find rabbits immediately, and if you don't get the rabbit hide right away, then the recipe for a bundle is not going to pop up. Until you've got rabbit hide and string, it's not going to tell you, oh, you can use those to make the bundle. And by the time you explore far enough afield to get hold of rabbit hide, I get the sense that most players are going to be past the point where bundles will be useful for them, at least in the early game inventory management phase. Depends whether you feel like you'll use them for other stuff further down the line. But one of the devs, Xylefian, who's written into the show before, was in my chat at the time and suggested, this is not a confirmation of anything, this was just like us throwing out some ideas, that bundles might be included in that bonus chest that you can start a new world with, so that players who are newer to the game and want a bit of assistance getting started would immediately know that they exist, right? So along with a wooden axe and a couple of sticks and some saplings and bone meal that you occasionally get in that bonus chest, if you had a bundle in there as well, then for a start you could probably start bundling up those items right away, but also you would understand that they were part of the game and maybe seek out ways of finding more. And a few people have suggested other gateways to bundles, like being able to trade them from leatherworkers, for example, as a higher tier leatherworker villager trade. And I feel like that also takes away a little bit from the idea of, hey, rabbit hide is useful now, because if you can just trade them instantly from leatherworkers, then that removes that kind of that path to getting bundles. But I do feel like it's, potentially a compromise that might be useful in future. And if you consider that armorers can also trade you diamond stuff without you having to really go and mine for diamonds, it kind of, it doesn't really gate all that much off, really, if you want to get that deep into villager trading.
Yeah, the whole bundle thing, it's an interesting process to watch, because I think the first thing I said last week was like, I really want this to be visual, not a list of stuff.
Yeah.
And sure enough, this week around, not saying that it was me, but saying that that's the direction that they're heading. And it's just interesting now that I've been playing Minecraft long enough to mess around with a couple of mods and starting to see now some of the very similar features from mods showing up in vanilla Minecraft in development. And I'm looking forward to the amount of feedback that they can get from bundles, from players like you doing snapshots and putting feedback in, and other folks out there, because I think that it hopefully opens up the gates to do some inventory things in a very Minecraft way.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want a one button solution either. As much as I kind of like, quote unquote, complain about the inventory on the show, I don't want a box that I put stuff in that sends things back to my storage system 100 miles away. Like that, I don't want that. That was fun and modded, but I don't want to do it all the time. But it just kind of opens up to your brain to like, what kind of other solutions are there going to be? Are they going to do things like color code them? Will they color code the whole bundle? Will it just be the tie that's a different color? Like things like that are like the sub changes to bundles. But then is there going to be something else added to the inventory that helps with bundles? Is there going to be different kinds of chests, perhaps, like different kinds of storage receptacles that we might not know are coming to help out with the inventory, stuff like that.
Yeah. There's definitely a lot of different problems still. Bundles, like I said, are not a magic bullet for all of our inventory woes, but I would hope that Mojang finds a more inventive solution to it than just adding another row to the player's inventory, just giving us more space to fill up with random junk, or, like having, various other things that are analogous to features we have already. And I think that's the main problem with bundles right now, is everyone's looking at them and thinking, an early game shulker box. And they're like, no, pocket storage. Like, this is a trapper keeper. This is just like a lunchbox that you throw a couple of things in. It's not like, magical inventory storage expansion. And so I think there are many different ways to incorporate these into existing gameplay. It's just about knowing they exist and having certain expectations for it. But I think Mojang are going to find, like you said, more Minecraft-y ways of solving the other problems with inventory, and that hopefully this is kind of only the beginning. That's probably where we're going to wrap it up for today's episode of The Spawn Chunks, though you can find more information about the show and links to some of the stuff that we've talked about today at thespawnchunks.com. The music for the show was composed by me, and The Spawn Chunks is proud to be a listener-supported podcast. If you get some value out of the show, consider putting some value back in. You can visit patreon.com/thespawnchunks to join our community, where pledging at any level gets you an invite to our patrons-only Discord chat, gets you listening to The Render Distance, which we've already mentioned a couple of times, and gets us closer to our next milestone goals, which are currently having a monthly Minecraft audio hangout with our listeners, hanging out in Discord, just shooting the breeze about what we're doing in Minecraft lately. We're currently at 213 patrons, which is down a bit from last week, but there's always room for more. And special thanks go out to our content engineers. We have two very special new folks to welcome to the content engineer list. So we have General Patton 82, Greener Canuck, Hunter 555, JD Williamson, Jumbo Sale, and Yitz. Thank you all for your support on this episode.
As we mentioned, you can email the show at spawnchunkmail@gmail.com, and sharing the podcast with your friends is the easiest way to support the show. It's free. You can find us at the Spawn Chunks on Twitter and Instagram, but a personal recommendation is by far the best way to share the podcast with friends. Just poke a friend in the arm from a safe distance and say, hey, you should listen to the Spawn Chunks, and let them know where to go. Where is that? You can find the Spawn Chunks on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube, hopefully Amazon Music as well. And the RSS feed is linked on thespawnchunks.com for you manual listeners out there. Don't forget, on the Patreon page, you can listen to the RSS feed there and get both the Render Distance and the Spawn Chunks into separate downloads. That's at patreon.com/thespawnchunks.
My name is Johnny, but online I go by Pixelriffs, and you can find most of what I do at youtube.com/Pixelriffs, where I attempt to make sense of this crazy and wonderful game in a series called The Minecraft Survival Guide. I also stream 3 days a week on Twitch, where we do behind-the-scenes work for the Survival Guide and also occasionally investigate the snapshots. I'm also the voice of the unofficial Hermitcraft recap, which you can find through a quick YouTube search, and aside from that, I'm at Pixelriffs on both Twitter and Instagram. Joel, where can people find you online?
All the things online for me are at joelduggan.com. You can listen to The Citadel Cafe at thecitadelcafe.com, my podcast about sci-fi and fantasy entertainment. Last week we talked about The Mandalorian. And you can follow me on social media at Joel Duggan, and on Twitch at twitch.tv/Joel Duggan, where I am building farmhouses and planting potatoes.
Thanks for visiting the Spawn Chunks. The world outside is infinite. Bundle up.